Hey, g'day, and welcome to the Concrete Connection Project podcast, episode 13. Now, normally I'm out on every single street of the Adelaide CBD trying to raise money and awareness for mental health and mental health charities that are supporting people that are struggling, trying to perform and create on each one of those streets. And I'm currently up to street 122 out of 577. But today I'm down in what's a beautifully sunny day in Alberton at the Pear Coffee House, and I'm chatting with Eimear Muir Cochrane, who is a retired mental health professor, and I'm so happy to be able to chat with you today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Now, could you please give myself and the listeners just a bit of a recap of your career and what you were doing in the mental health industry, I guess?
Well, I was a registered nurse initially. I did a university degree where we did a mental health placement, and after I qualified as a registered nurse, I thought I'd really prefer to be more mouth-on than hands-on. Mm-hmm. So I went and did my mental health nurse training. Mm-hmm. Then I worked as an educator and as a researcher, looking at the effects of the 83 bushfires, 5 years on, 10 years on, with Professor Sandy McFarlane at Adelaide University. So we looked at post-traumatic stress disorder. And from that I ended up in the university and worked my way up at UniSA in Flinders to Professor of Mental Health Nursing.
Wow, yeah, So my good friend and your good friend Philip Darbyshire introduced us to be able to catch up and have a chat. And so he was mentioning to me that you've seen a vast range of mental health and different mental health illnesses. So what is the spectrum of mental health? Can you explain that a little bit?
I think mental health is deceiving as a term because it's usually used to mean mental ill health.
Yes.
And then what does mental health mean? And it means a whole range of things. So mental health really can look at the way you think, the way you act, the way you feel, which are affected by the way you think and the way you act. The way you have intimate relationships, your spirituality, your sense of belonging in the community, all of those things really add up to a feeling of well-being and mental health, which basically means feeling okay during the day and getting things done that you want to do. So I would say that mental ill health starts when you're not able to do the things you want to during the day. You can't get out of bed because you're too sad. You can't stop crying because you're stuck on something that you haven't been able to think through. You can't eat because you're too depressed. All of those things, all of the activities of daily living, the meaningful things, when they are interrupted, that's when mental ill health starts. So mental health doesn't mean that you're having a great day every day. We all have ups and downs. We all can feel melancholic. We'll all have a friend whose glass is always half empty. Yeah, a bit of a sad sack.
Yep.
And they might not see themselves as a sad sack, but that's their normal state. And they're okay with that.
Yeah.
We all know people who are completely overly optimistic that nothing will ever go wrong, even when it looks like it's going to. Yeah. And we always all have friends who are really quite pragmatic about how we need to have plan A, but then we need plan B. If we're going to go hiking, we better take an EPIRB just in case. So we're all somewhere on that scale. But it's when it interrupts with our feelings of being able to do what we want to do when we want to do it, that's when mental health becomes mental ill health and becomes a problem. So if I can't eat because I'm very depressed, that becomes a problem. Because then the less you eat, the less energy you've got, the less useful it is for getting out of bed to do things. If I'm not sleeping well as well, then all of those things are going to affect the way I feel and the way I think. And we all have a lot of negative self-talk on a good day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So mental health really is about being able to roll with the punches of everyday life and being able to do things that keep you as you wish to be. It's not about being extremely happy all of the time. I did some work online with a project we call Mental Wealth. And what that was about was not only your own sense of well-being, but how do you increase the sense of well-being for the community around you? And I invited students from around the world to come up with projects that didn't cost anything that they could do. So there was things like leaving a note on a table saying, have a better day. Leaving a book with a message on a bench. And we called that mental wealth, building social connection and social capacity. And I think that's what mental health is in society. It's building mental wealth, so that if you're having a bad day, I can help you to build your mental health, but by helping you and you by helping other people, talking to people, ringing them up when you know they might be a bit lonely. We're actually breaking down that stigma that you're particularly interested in.
Yeah, well, that's it. Well, just driving past, the side of this building, I think it says laugh heaps. I think that's, probably generating a bit of that mental wealth, particularly of people driving around in the community, seeing that every day. And we just talked before, because you're a little bit involved with this venue, the Pear Coffee House, but on the side of the building it does get changed quite regularly. And is that sort of with the theme of mental wealth?
Yes, I believe so. The overall aim of the cafe as a community cafe is to really build connection between people in the local area, reduce socialisation, increase diversity, increase awareness of the people that live around us and how we can help each other. It's a coming together.
Yeah.
And it's become a bit like Cheers, because people, you walk in and people know your name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as I was coming this morning, grabbing a coffee, and like, oh, who are you seeing? Oh, I'm seeing Eimear. And oh, yeah. Everyone, everyone's ears sort of pricked up. It was quite cute. But it was just going back to what you said. How it was interesting. You said, some people are a bit of a sad sack, and that's what they are, but they're incredibly productive. And then, because I interviewed a friend of mine in Tasmania, and he said the same thing. He goes, generally most of the time I am in that melancholic sort of state, and that's just who I am. That's who I'm fine with. He's a creator, he's an artist, and he generally floats around that area, but still productive and still maintains a sense of creativity in his place in the community. So so it is that productivity during the day, and if you can stay on top of that, I guess that's mentally healthy.
Well, and knowing yourself, in the sense that some people are extroverts and they want to go out all the time, they want to socialise, and they may or may not like being on their own. And then there are people that don't mind going out, but occasionally would prefer not to, and then getting a tiz because I've said I'm going, but I don't really want to go. And how long have I got to stay? And then all that negative self-talk. It's like, why did I say I would go? And then you allow it. If helping somebody like that would be, well, if you have an obligation to go, it's a duty thing for family. Well, maybe you could go and you just stay for half an hour. Or maybe if it's causing you that much anxiety, you tell them you can't go because you're just not feeling up to it. And maybe next time think about any social event. If you don't really want to go, you don't have to go. It's okay. But if you never want to go and you live on your own and you haven't spoken to somebody for 3 days, anybody, then that could become an issue for you because you become more and more in yourself and less connected. When I work with people talking about how to reduce their own anxiety and their own sense of not being good enough, I say, well, if you go, you have to go to the shops during the week. So when you go to the shops, give a compliment to somebody at the shop that you like their hair, or you like their nails, or you like just their vibe. And I said, what will happen if you do that? And they said, well, they'll probably smile back. And I said, they might stand a bit taller. And I said, yeah. And I said, how are you going to feel? Oh, then I've had a smile, then I feel good. I said, well, that is an interaction that is going to be really useful for you.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't know why I did it, but I often go running around the area where I'm where I live and running on the tracks. And some days I'll see another bloke running past, you know, probably similar to me, you know, middle age, running around just trying to stay fit. And then every now and then I just stick my hand out and go for a high five, and then I can suddenly they're like, there's a split second where they're like, what the heck is going on? And then they smile so much, and then when you get a high five, it's just like a crazy feeling, and you know, it sort of gives me goosebumps every time. And you know, you might not see that person again, but you just high five them, you've seen their smile, and then I just sort of radiate from it as well, just silly things like that.
Yeah, well, it's fundamental non-verbal basic human connection. Like, you're there, I've noticed you're there, I wish you well.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, that's a great philosophy. And also you did mention have you had any human interaction in, you know, the past 3 days? Like, is there much evidence that supports, you know, because I do hear a lot about, you know, community and things like that and how important that is, but even just, you know, if you are home for 3 days and don't have any human interaction, what is there a bit of science behind that, or like what can we talk about?
Well, certainly research that has been done looking at particularly older men on their own, or people living on their own, is that their physical complications are less good than people who are living with other people. So there are physical effects such as your natural stress hormones increase, but also your cognitive state will not be as strong because you haven't had an experience that day. Whereas if you've been out for coffee in the morning, you have something in your mind to reflect on. You've said hello to somebody, something's happened.
Yeah. So things happening gets, you know, the cogs turning.
Well, we are naturally interactive social beings. We are not meant to be in isolation all the time. And some people who choose to be in that isolation take themselves to a special place, in either spiritually, emotionally, in order to do that, and do it with grace and with reasons
and purpose for it.
But I think if you think about, you know, a homeless person, for example, again talking about stigma a little bit, a homeless person on the side of the road, they are in dirty clothes, they're hungry, they may not smell very good, and people will walk past and judge them and look at them and not want to give them any money. But that person may have chosen not to have a roof over their head. But I don't think anybody chooses to be dirty and cold and hungry. It happens. And that's the thing about moving stigma on. Like, it's taking away that judgment about them, that this person chose to do that, and if they just pull their bootstraps up, they'd be fine. It's rubbish.
Go get a job, you know.
It's rubbish. So removing that stigma that somebody who is very depressed, you should avoid them because you might catch it, or you're going to say the wrong thing. You can never say the wrong thing. Sometimes you don't have to say anything. You just be with people. Yeah,
that's it, just being there, you know.
Yeah, it's very hard to say the wrong thing. You have to be really, really, really wrong. And the average kind person isn't going to do that. So I think people are afraid of mental ill health because it was never talked about. You can't see it. You can't see it like you see a broken arm. People are now more likely to have had experience of it because it's talked about, it's in the paper, it's on social media. But even so, unless they've had a personal, familial experience of it, they find it difficult to understand how could somebody be that sad? Why can't they just pull themselves together? Just get on with it, get over it. Like, you never get over certain life experiences, you have to live around them. Depression is a combination of your natural neurotransmitter hormones and a whole range of things, including trauma. Some things that you're not responsible for, but it's how you manage those. In the same way, people with schizophrenia think differently to us, may not be in touch with reality, may have beliefs that we don't agree with, but could get them into trouble if they think they're really rich or very special, or that they can fly. It's going to get you into trouble.
Yeah.
And people find that very hard to understand. But it doesn't mean those people are necessarily dangerous. They're usually very scared and very isolated. It's very, very few people with psychosis hurt other people. It's just that the few that do, you see it in the press. Everybody thinks people who are psychotic, who are mad, in society's terms, are dangerous, but they're not. They're scared. So mental ill health can be way over at a very serious end.
Yeah.
But having a bad day, or being a bit melancholic, or living life with your glass, a little bit half empty, is not the same thing at all. And it depends on how well you know yourself.
Yeah, because we do hear a lot about, your analogy there with the glass half empty. We hear a lot about, that, but we don't hear about, some of the real acute stuff at the other end.
That's right. And now we're admitting people to hospital sicker than we used to discharge them 20 years ago. And we admit them for really short periods of time. We used to admit people to acute psychiatric units for 3 weeks. And now, because of the pressures on the system and the performance indicators given to the doctors by the hospitals, by the states, by the governments, it's about 10 days. So you've barely got somebody better before they're being discharged, which means as a nurse, I haven't seen their normal self really yet.
Yeah.
Because you never see them as they are when they're well, when they come in. So I think that's the shame, and that's why we need more community grounds up driven people looking after each other, people with lived experience informing policy, people with lived experience looking after people with lived experience, because they know what it's like, and they don't have that stigma.
Yeah, is there something that could? I'm just thinking, because I know just in my experience, if I've reached out to someone, sometimes people, as you sort of mentioned before, they don't know how to really help sometimes, and sometimes, we're all encouraged to talk, and then when people do finally talk, sometimes the people they're talking to then retract because they don't know, there is a bit of a stigma attached and they don't know what to do. Is there something we need to... Is there a community education that we need to give out there to people to say, well, maybe just being there and things like that is
just being there, just listening, not just nodding and going, not wanting to jump in and solve it. You're having a bad day. Okay, Ben, you're going to do this. You're going to feel much better in half an hour.
Yeah, and then dust the hands off it and see you later.
That's all you need to do to feel better today.
Yeah.
It's like just listening. Because you know how to manage, but you're obviously, if you've reached out to somebody, you want that human connection. So listening is very underrated, and most people aren't very good at it. Listening is not going, oh, I'm glad you said that, Ben, because I'm not going to fix your problem, and also I'm going to sort out your project.
Yep.
Yeah, that isn't listening.
No, yeah.
Listening is a very active, concentrated process of being in a moment while somebody is verbalising and non-verbalising something that's happening to them. And the only thing that you need to do as a listener is to acknowledge that you're listening.
Yeah.
And learning that silence, we've all been brought up that silence is bad. It's bad at the dinner table, it's bad socially, it's bad when there's a gap in the conversation, it's like, oh, okay, might have to bring something up now to talk about. But having silence between people, that the listener is still being there with you. And I think that's the stigma as well, is that people feel bad about it because they're just sitting here doing nothing. But you're not, you're still being with someone.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I have heard a lot about, active listening, try to, remove any distractions when someone really wants to open up and, to active listen. And it takes energy and it takes focus. And, and if someone's doing that, I think that's really important. You did mention a lot of people do deal with a lot of self-negative talk.
Yeah.
Now,
I don't know anybody who doesn't. I'd like to meet them.
yeah, so and I think I've struggled with that a lot through my career as a musician, and doing a performance and things like that, because I'm really enjoying this chat because through my industry, I've talked to a lot of musicians and creative people. I'm not to say that you're not creative, but people that are performers and things. And I think a lot of people deal with that self-negative talk. What are some ways, how can we all be a little more positive and a little bit more kinder to ourselves, do you think?
I think understanding that negative self-talk probably comes from a very primitive time, which was all about fight or flight, in terms of we're going to either catch that and eat it, or we've got to run away so it doesn't eat us. So I think there is some literature to say that it is an innate thing to protect us. Yeah, in the same way we don't eat food that smells terrible. Yeah, because it could be off and it'll make us sick. So it's like, we don't teach kids that. We all learnt it somehow. So it must be some fundamental, basic human instinct. So with negative self-talk, I think it's about acknowledging that you had it, and then thinking about how much that's going to affect you. So, for example, I used to go to work in a rush, and I was famous at work for not having the right earrings in, right? And then sometimes in the car, I go, I've done it again. And I think, I can never get this right. How come other people can get this right? But it didn't bother me enough. I could just let that go, because I didn't actually have that much importance to it. Because I was obviously not that much concerned about my outward appearance. Maybe I should have been on occasion, but so that had low value for me. But so I'm a bit down, I'm having a bad day. I've had a row with my friend, and I'm in the wrong because I snapped at her when I shouldn't, and I'm walking around the market and I see another friend, and I'm just about to go up to them, and I think they've seen me, but they just walk off, and I think, oh, they're ignoring me because I'm a bad person, even though they don't know I had a row with somebody else, but so I must be a bad person. And now even this friend doesn't like me, so now I'm obviously not worthy of having friends. But you can reframe that. Like, what else could have happened? She could have suddenly realised she was running late and had to go. She could have not seen me at all. So reframing it to what are the other possible explanations for why I'm thinking after an experience that way can help you unpack that. So the value you put on it can be one way, like, okay, so I'm not meant to eat that sugary stuff, but I had some stuff today, but it's not the end of the world. I've reframed it. It's not the end of the world, because I can start again tomorrow. I've fallen out with my friend, but she knows I've been going through a really hard time, and I know my behaviour was wrong, but I think I can fix this, and I think I can make myself feel better by explaining to her, and hope that she will understand. And she's done it before, so I think she will. So that kind of unpacking. What are the other possible reasons that this could be? Do you know? Like, I come in the cafe, I drop a mug, I break the mug. God, I'm so clumsy. What are the other reasons? I wasn't watching where I was going. Mind you, that could make you a bit clumsy. It was the cup was slippy. Yeah, it doesn't mean I'm a fool's risk forever.
Yeah.
I might be, mind you. I'm a bit of a fool's risk. So a kind of an unpacking, and sometimes you could write that down. What are the other possible explanations of this? Sometimes you can, how does a thought make you feel? Because the thoughts are so strong, because what they do is they affect how we feel. So you've had a bad day, so you don't feel very cheerful, you don't feel really confident in yourself about your abilities as a musician today, because of one thing that happened that made you think a certain way, that made you feel a certain way, and now you're not going to go and do that gig, so maybe behave in a certain way. So if you can unpack the action, think about the feeling, and then reframe it. Well, it doesn't mean I have to pack in my whole career. It just means I might have to do this or practice that a little bit more. But I'm still an all right musician. Yeah. And then sometimes getting feedback from other people. Do you think I'm really that crap at this? Seriously?
Yeah, well, that's good. Well, some people might say yes, but I don't know.
But you choose the people you talk. You talk to people you trust. You wouldn't ask somebody to listen unless you trusted them.
Yeah, that's right. What about the fear? I think it links in a little bit with probably the self-talk, and it probably is linked in with a bit of fear of judgment of others. Do you think that comes into play quite a bit?
Yes, absolutely. Because we all care about what other people think.
Why do we care so much?
I think it's driven by our own fragile self-esteem, how we all want to be wanted, we all want to be liked, we want to be seen in certain ways. But at the end of it all, it's all about the ones that you really care for, how they think about you, the ones you trust, and they trust you. So it is irrational in that sense. I think social media makes it all worse.
Yeah.
You've got to look like this, you've got to look a certain way, you've got to have a big bum, a small bum, no bum, etc., etc., etc. I think those things confuse people working out for themselves where they are in the world.
Yeah, it's an interesting world to navigate, isn't it? Particularly now with social media and all the extra bits and pieces. But so retired now, and what sort of work are you doing now? Because you're doing some voluntary work around the place.
Yeah, I work as a community mental health visitor. This is a prescribed role under the Mental Health Act. So it's a voluntary role, but what it is a role where we always go in pairs. We go into disability and mental health community and inpatient settings to advocate for clients, people with mental health problems, find out if they're being treated okay. Giving them information, giving them numbers, and for their families to ring if they're concerned about their care. They don't think they're being treated properly. Because in the past, I think there were a lot of issues about how people were not always treated well for a whole range of reasons. Sometimes organisations were built that way, sometimes funding, sometimes people just not being trained to look after people with mental health. So my role is about advocacy. Obviously, I speak to staff as well. I want to advocate for them, because if they're having a bad day in a unit, in an inpatient unit, well, I'm sure the clients are as well. And is that because the food's terrible, or it's too cold, or it's too hot, or nobody's listening to them? So I do that. I'm also just learning. I'm starting a couple of weeks to do my light vehicle training. So it means that in my local community, I'll be able to hire a van and take people out for the day. And I do free listening at the Pear Cafe here, and I help people with writing applications. Could just be filling a form in for Centrelink, could be a resume.
Free listening?
Free listening, yeah. So half an hour of me active listening. It's not counselling, that's made clear. I just listen to people. And my experience with that has been that people come with an issue, and by the time that they've come to the end of the half an hour or so, and my only interventions are like are really that they're solving the problem for themselves.
Yeah, well, that's something that I've found, particularly with journaling and speaking to people, not necessarily a therapist or a psychologist or anything like that, but people, when they do have a chance to talk or write, they might know the answers when they start, but they can map it out. They make their own case, and they can see like the pros or cons of what they're struggling with sort of come to light as they talk or as they write. Is that
Absolutely.
sort of...
No, you've hit the nail on the head. Reflection in action. They're reflecting while they talk. And I think I do the listening because journaling doesn't work for everyone. No.
And it's hard to do, even just to start.
It feels a bit naff sometimes.
Yeah. It does. But I do like to do it, and when I can, but yeah, I think talking's easier for a lot of people.
And the people that come with, because this is not counselling, it is not serious high-end problems, it is people everyday problems. So people come with issues like my neighbour, who I really like, is drinking too much or taking drugs, and I don't really want her in the house when she's like that, but I really want to carry on seeing her. Other things are, difficult relationships with family members. Brothers stop talking to me, I really want to connect, not sure how to do it, but I've been doing this and this, but I'm not really sure. And they just talk through there. So I'm not offering solutions. I might make reflective comments. I'd say, could I make a reflection? And that might be, it sounds like you've already been through a couple of actions that haven't worked, so you know what doesn't work. So what other things do you think you might try? That's about as interventionist as I get.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
And it's people feel better after. That's what they say. They say they feel better because it's undivided. It's a safe, non-judgmental space.
Yeah. Well, I mean, having stuff on your chest and you need to get off your chest can be suffocating. So it's good to get that stuff out. Now, that's offered here at Pear. But there's a lot of other community things offered here. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So we have free Tai Chi on a Friday morning at 10 o'clock. That's run by one of the volunteers. We call ourselves volunteers because we had some sponsorship through ECH, but we're basically community members. We have a craft group. We have coffee and conversation group. We have yoga. We have children's activities in there. Holidays, we have gardening, a whole range of things. Anything that a community member would like to do is or ask for is usually encouraged to work with the staff here to facilitate either them doing it, or we have book clubs, obviously, either them doing it themselves or finding somebody who can do it. So if they can't do it, we usually ask around and go, oh, you're good at that, would you do this? And so, I know probably in this neighbourhood now 60 people I wouldn't have ever known from if this cafe wasn't here.
That's so good.
Yeah,
creating that community wealth and mental wealth, I imagine.
Yeah, mental wealth. So it is about going from social connection, social cohesion to a whole notion of social capital, that the community can look after each other outside of this. This is the platform for the social connection.
Yeah, it's so good. Yeah, well, it's a beautiful day down here. I think, if we could touch base again sometime and keep checking in, I think that would be awesome. 'Cause I'm loving the podcast so far. But is there anything you could leave us with? Perhaps there's people out there that haven't been diagnosed with anything in particular, but are definitely struggling. Something that I sort of found is having building up a bit of a tool belt of things that you do, a checklist or things that you can go through which might help. Is there any tools we can add to our tool belt today? Because obviously such a broad spectrum of things on the mental health scale that there's not one tool for every problem, just like a tradesperson. You don't need a hammer for every job. Sometimes you need to be a bit gentler or things like that. Is there any tools we can add to our tool belt today, do you think?
I think when people get up in the morning is to check in with themselves and see how they are themselves that day. So that's kind of, in a way, a little bit mindful. So just thinking about themselves and are you okay today? So if they're, and how not okay. And also thinking about 3 things they might be grateful for, or 3 things they like about themselves. The latter's a bit hard.
Yes.
However, if you can think of 3 things you like about yourself, and they can be the same things every day, that insight will give you the ability to have that toolkit to draw on when you're not having such a great day. Because you're strong, you're wise, you're good at asking for help. You can make a number of meals without a recipe. They're all things that are going to get you through a bad day to a good day.
Yeah, and then if you're not having a good day, reflect on what you have been saying about yourself and maybe tackle one of those things during that day to help give you a boost. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Exactly.
Yeah, well, I think that's very good. Yeah, I think something that's been shining through is definitely self-awareness and mindfulness as well about who you are, and then what works for you as well. Well, I really appreciate the time, and I hope we can catch up again because I think the listeners will really appreciate this podcast.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Eimear. Cheers.